SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Hi, this is Chris Keem with Cannon Ford Lincoln. Forget about the tariffs raising prices. Ford Motor Company has lowered prices. Employee pricing across the board on Ford and Lincoln products. Come see us at Cannon Ford Lincoln. When the smoke clears, nobody beats a Cannon deal. Nobody.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive.
Good Thursday morning. Welcome to Mornings with Richard Cross on the road on this 17th day of April. Glad to be with you as we come to you live from the Jackson Convention Complex ahead of Mississippi Economic Council's, the Mississippi Economic Council's annual meeting. They have 3 annual events, and today is one of those. We're glad to be with you. Always enjoy being with our friends from MEC, and got a lot of good conversations that are coming for you this morning. Of course, we'll talk with Scott Waller, President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. Excel by 5. That's a fun organization that we're going to talk about this morning with Daisy Carter-Slater. She's the executive director there. Gene Massey will join us, executive director with Ascent to 55%. That's the Propel Education Forum. Dr. Derek Reed will join us as well. He's the director of CTE and Workforce Development for the Pascagoula Gautier School District. John McKay from the Manufacturers Association will be with us this morning. We've got a lot to get to and a lot to talk about. Thanks for starting your day with us. Going to be another gorgeous day in the Magnolia State. Lance, you rolled out this morning. That nippy air that we had just a couple of days seems to be kind of slipping out the door. How are you, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great. Yeah, it is not cold out there. So
no.
It was a little crisp last night. Enjoyed it. Woke up and felt some humidity in the air. It's kind of a very familiar feel, right?
Yes, the old friend, Mr. Humidity, has made its return.
Hey, I love your night light. It's very nice.
Yeah, no, I mean it's still dark outside, and we've got just the mood lighting in the Jackson Convention Complex early this morning. Over the course of the next 3 hours, it will go from quiet, where it feels like we're kind of talking in a cave, to a buzz in the building as several hundred folks make their way in for the annual meeting for MEC. Weather across the state of Mississippi, Ashland, Mississippi, up in the northern part of the state. Some clouds this morning, going to give way to generally sunny skies for the afternoon. High of 81 later today with winds out of the south and southeast at 10 to 20 miles an hour. About over in the eastern part of the state. Philadelphia, Mississippi, you got some clouds this morning. Going to be sunny this afternoon. Bumping 84. Wouldn't be a bad day to spend a little time at, Dancing Rabbit. Going to get out on the golf course today there at Pearl River Resort. Not a bad plan. Hazelhurst, you're coming in with partly cloudy skies. 85 degrees in Hazelhurst today. Winds out of the south. And how about down in South Mississippi? Moss Point. You know it's a good day when the forecast says abundant sunshine. Feels like that's what we've had the last couple of days. 78 degrees for the high in the southern part of the state. Winds out of the southeast. Alexander Cartwright was born on this day in 1820. He is credited as the modern inventor of baseball, recognized as the father of baseball, inducted into the Hall of Fame, born in New York City for those of us that love the game of baseball. Thank you, Mr. Cartwright. We appreciate it. Not sure you would recognize the game the way that it exists today. Been a few changes along the way, but that's okay. This day in 1837, J.P. Morgan was hatched. Well, he wasn't actually hatched, but you get the idea. Financier and banker, General Electric, U.S. Steel, AT&T, born in Hartford, Connecticut. If you take some of the business tycoons, the barons from the mid-1800s and you adjust their fortunes for today's money, you get some rich dudes out there, although they're not around.
Yeah. Hey, like Roddy Rowdy Piper? Yeah. Were you a fan of WW, whatever one he was?
I saw his name on the birthdays list today, and I thought, Lance is going to get to this one. I'll just leave it for him.
Yeah, I love the Piper, man. How do you wrestle in a kilt? He figured it out though, and also he was in the cartoons, the WWF or whatever it was, the Hulk Hogan Heroes, and he was the heel, but he was always a great guy. Great actor too. And hey, John, or I get you say it correctly this morning, Jan Levon, the Polka King movie with Jack Black. That's how I know how to say this guy's name right. But Jan Hammer, 77 years old, known for Crockett's theme and the Miami Vice theme, which I have loaded up. And as the listeners know, I love me some Miami Vice theme. So big birthday for Jan Hammer today at 77 years old. So
you want to recognize how much money Elon Musk actually has? J.P. Morgan's net worth adjusted for inflation, $57 billion.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even get close
to that.
It's
about one-sixth of Elon Musk's net worth.
That's amazing.
It really is crazy to recognize just how much money that actually is.
Well, when you think about the salaries, too, of athletes and things, I mean, it's just a chip of what, say, an Elon Musk has or J.P. Morgan back in the day. They make so much money, but you look at it and put it into perspective, and it just kind of blows your mind at how rich or how much money, $1 billion really is. You got 20 billion or, 5 billion? Goodness gracious. That's a load.
53 years old today, American actress Jennifer Garner, born on this day in 1972. I don't know if she's more famous for being an actress or for advertising credit cards and skincare products.
Well, yeah, she's a farmer now, I guess, or because one of the commercials,
right.
one of the commercials has her, talking about being on her farm. So yeah, she's multifaceted.
Little organic hobby farm, I guess, for Jennifer Garner. Also, Posh Spice, or if you prefer, Victoria Beckham, was born on this day in 1974. English singer and fashion designer. She was Posh in the Spice Girls and is married to David Beckham. April 17th, for the first time ever in 1397, that was a long time ago.
That's on back
Geoffrey Chaucer tells the Canterbury Tales for the very first time at the court of English King Richard II.
A cousin of yours, huh?
Yeah. You didn't know I was royalty, did you?
I knew you were royalty. That no doubt in my mind, brother.
Yes, in my own mind. Yeah, Geoffrey Chaucer tells Canterbury Tales for the first time. I told you yesterday that Jackie Robinson made his Major League debut on the 16th of April. It took just one day for him to get his first hit, April 17th, 1947. First Major League hit, laid down a bunt, beat it out, and that was the first of many. Mickey Mantle made his Major League Baseball debut on this day in 1951. Some say the greatest of all the New York Yankees, went 1 for 4 in his big league debut. On this day in 1961, not exactly the most proud day in terms of military or undercover operations for the United States. 1,400 Cuban exiles land in the Bay of Pigs in a doomed attempt to overthrow Fidel Castro. That was in conjunction with, spy agencies, right?
Oh, yeah, there was all kind of stuff going on with that. That's my favorite story in the history of mankind.
Is it really?
Yeah, just everything that goes around Bay of Pigs and everything that happens after that. And the world changed dramatically as a result of that grand miscalculation. You can put that on CIA, you can put it on Kennedy or both, or, the military complex. But, the world changed dramatically after that.
Certainly blame to go around. That was Cold War days for the United States, and the biggest concern was Fidel Castro and Cuba's propping up of Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time. This day in 1983, Nolan Ryan struck out his 3,500th batter in his baseball career. Now, he went on to strike out a whole bunch more after that. an arm that was, I don't know, made
lightning bolt.
Yeah, it was like the combination of steel and elastic put together to just throw a gazillion innings, 7 no-hitters in his career. And on this day in 1993, 2 Los Angeles police officers were convicted in federal court of violating Rodney King's civil rights, and they were sentenced to prison. 2 other police officers were acquitted, and the riots came shortly thereafter. So Rodney King, 1993, those officers were convicted on this day. We got some news headlines coming up for you when we come back. We'll hit some sports headlines, get you a lottery update, and we'll wrap up the 6 o'clock hour about 45 minutes from right now with Scott Waller from the Mississippi Economic Council. Glad to be with you as you start your day. Don't forget that the C Spire text line is open, 601-879-4395. Fans can tell you that fast speeds win games. That's why C Spire brings you fiber home internet, nationwide 5G wireless, and IT solutions that move as fast as your business. Learn more at cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you. Just getting started with you on what's going to be a beautiful Thursday across the state of Mississippi. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
From the Venable Glass.
No filibuster. Just everything you need to know to start your day smarter. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Thanks for being with us on Mornings with Richard Cross, live from the Jackson Convention Complex. This morning we have the MEC annual meeting, and we'll talk a lot today about economic development, some of the good things that are happening here in the state of Mississippi, and how the economy in the Magnolia State is continuing to grow. Got some pink and purple fluffy clouds as the sun begins to make its way up over the capital city this morning. Richard Cross, Lance Tolbert, and of course, we can't do this on the road without Houston and Alex. They're tucked away behind the scenes somewhere over here. Some news headlines for you. Is the Mississippi River an endangered species? Species maybe not, but America's Rivers says that the mighty Mississippi is the most endangered river of 2025. American Rivers is a nonprofit highlighting increasing environmental and policy threats that could prove detrimental to both the river's ecosystem and the millions of people who depend on it. We talked with Austin Golding yesterday. I don't know that he seemed like the river was endangered, but they say heads up, the designation of the Mississippi River as an endangered river, the most endangered river of 2025, comes as Trump's administration considers sweeping cuts to FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program. American Rivers argues that federal programs are crucial for flood risk management, disaster preparedness, and community resilience along the 2,320-mile stretch from Minnesota all the way down to South Louisiana. So, I don't know that means anything. I don't know that it will change anything. But, hey, American Rivers says, heads up, be careful with that.
It's hard to believe that it just starts out as a little creek, up there in Minnesota, and it turns into what we see, down here. It's amazing.
You ever seen where the Mississippi starts in Minnesota?
I've never been there. I mean, I've seen pictures of it, but I'm sure it's much more amazing in person. But just looks like a little spot where
just a river,
just getting started.
The start of a river, yeah. Got a lot that flows into it between Minneapolis and New Orleans, though. There's no question. The Jackson mayoral race is, I guess, heating up. We're certainly getting closer to that runoff date. And the endorsements are starting to roll in for Mississippi Senator John Horhn. U.S. Representative Benny Thompson, a Democrat whose district covers a large chunk of the capital city, announced his support for Horhn over incumbent Chokwe Lumumba, as a runoff between the two candidates gets closer and closer. The longtime federal lawmaker has espoused his support for Lumumba in the past, but he is changing course. Maybe changing horse as well, switching horses. Here's what Benny said. I have represented parts of Jackson, both as congressman and county supervisor, and I've worked with mayors from Dale Danks to Chokwe Lumumba Sr. and Chokwe Lumumba, the current mayor. Given the many challenges facing Jackson, I am convinced that John Horn is better suited to handle these challenges. During lengthy talks with John, he shared his vision for the city of Jackson about crime, public safety, urban blight, housing, economic development, and transportation. He is 100% opposed to the state's hostile takeover actions of the Jackson Medgar Wiley Evers International Airport. And so Benny says that John Horn is the guy for the city of Jackson. He's not the only one that has handed off an endorsement. There have been multiple business leaders who have chimed in, including the man who most recently is behind Top Golf in Ridgeland. Pracon Global Investment Group President and CEO Gabriel Prado has introduced John Horn, saying that he is the man that can bring safety and prosperity to the capital city. Here's what Prado had to say. I've been in Jackson for over 18 years now. I've seen the struggles the city has had with security and lack of investment, and we believe Senator Horn is the only person capable now to bring prosperity and security to Jackson. This endorsement is about change. He says, if your life has gotten better over the last couple of years, then don't vote for change. But if you feel it hasn't gotten better, then Senator Horn is your guy for mayor. He talked some about some personal experience, but you understand this piece of Prado's endorsement. He's approaching this from a business investment standpoint, investment in the capital city, big projects, whether they're talking about businesses or hotels or condos or housing, just money flowing into the city and the business community. And Prado says, look, we had issues with water. We had issues with trash. We've got issues with crime. Those are basic functions of city government that are not operating efficiently. And by saying not operating efficiently, in some cases it means not even operating, as the trash piled up and the water stopped flowing. And he thinks John Horn is better suited to handle those challenges for the capital city going forward. So we will see where this goes. The Trump administration, we talked yesterday about the threat on funding for Harvard. The Trump administration has requested that the Internal Revenue Service start the process of revoking Harvard's tax-exempt status. Harvard currently has a 501c3 educational institution designation, and therefore they don't pay federal income tax. The move would be an extraordinary step for the government to take against a major university, akin to a long IRS battle with Bob Jones University over its racial policies. Renovations of tax-exempt status typically happen only after a detailed IRS audit, and the process would likely lead Harvard to contest any IRS revocation of that status in court. The effort to try to revoke Harvard's crucial status comes after the university recently declined a variety of demands from the administration, including a request for the school to share all admission data with the federal government. Harvard does not want to open its books. And here's the significance of this. Harvard has the biggest endowment in all of higher education, an endowment of over $50 billion. So that endowment grows through a couple of ways. One way that it grows is people continue to donate money to Harvard. There are a lot of people that have graduated from Harvard that have made a lot of money, and they love dear old university, and they give back to dear old university. And they endow programs, and they endow professorships, and they endow buildings, and they want their name on things and all of that stuff. But that's only part of the way that the endowment grows at Harvard. The other way is through investments. Investments in the stock market, investments in the bond market, investments in private equity. And Lance, if you invest money, and let's just say that you're really successful, right? You've got your nest egg that you invest and you make wise decisions, and your nest egg grows. You don't pay taxes on the amount that you invested. You pay taxes on the gains that you invest. Well, Harvard's endowment is growing on average by about $2 billion a year, but they're not paying any tax, as is the case with almost all public universities. They're not paying any tax on the gains that endowment makes through the markets and through investment. Some might say that this is a slippery slope. Others would say, yeah, but there are certain triggers, there are certain qualifications that you have to meet to be a 501c3, to be tax exempt, to be a nonprofit. One of those is you've got to operate for the greater good. Another is that you've got to do no harm. And I think the Trump administration, in launching this IRS inquiry, is saying you're not serving the greater good. You are not doing no harm when you allow anti-Semitism to permeate the way you operate, to permeate and strike fear into the students on your campus. The other thing is that you're supposed to be politically neutral. Harvard is, despite their protest to the contrary, somewhat less than political neutral.
And remember,
the way they teach, and the fact that only 3% of their faculty identifies as conservative, the rest of it identifies as liberal or Democrat. That's a pretty overwhelming majority if you want to say that you are politically neutral.
Well, and remember, you take away that 501c3 status, too, and the donations drop because those donating the money don't get the deal. You know, they don't get
tax write-off.
They don't get the deal. So, yeah, the money dries up, and you have to start paying taxes on gains. So that's a double whammy, and definitely it's not something, if you're Harvard, you want to be staring down the barrel of, even if you are growing at a $2 billion clip. It's just that'll dry it up quick.
Yep. The spin machine was in full effect yesterday after Chris Van Hollen made his trip to San Salvador, El Salvador. Remember, he was going to try and meet with the Salvadoran president and get the Maryland man home, Abrego Garcia. The Department of Justice is playing hardball. They released both county and federal information identifying Abrego Garcia as an expected member of MS-13. And Van Hollen said he was going to try and meet with the president of El Salvador. It was almost like he was facing Nolan Ryan, a great big old swing and a miss, a strikeout. No audience granted to Senator Van Hollen. Quick timeout. We got some sports headlines and a lottery update when we come back with you on Mornings with Richard Cross.
Pour yourself a cup of coffee and get the Magnolia State's most important news of the day. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Time for your Mississippi Lottery update. There's a lot that's happening at the Mississippi Lottery. Be sure to check out their website, mslottery.com, to keep up with everything that is going on. There was no jackpot winner last night for the Lotto America drawing, which means Saturday night's drawing is now worth over $31 million, and your estimated cash value has now eclipsed $14 million. Told you a week or so ago that this is now the second largest Lotto America jackpot in history. Last night's numbers were 2, 5, 45, 47, 48. The Star Ball was 8, and the All-Star bonus multiplier was 2. The Powerball jackpot grows as well after no winners from last night's drawing. The estimated jackpot for Saturday, $131 million. You would take home about $59 million if you took the cash value. Last night's numbers, 20, 24, 42, 43, 49. The Powerball was 19, and the Power Play multiplier was 3.
Well, double play numbers from Wednesday, April 16th, 7, 36, 40, 47, 59, Powerball of 9. And Mega Millions, it's up to $112 million. You get to take home about $49.3 million of that. and that will be a Friday drawing on April the 18th. The numbers from Tuesday, 6, 10, 13, 24, 63 with a mega ball of 2.
The match 5, no jackpot winner, so tonight will be up to $58,000. Last night's drawing, 25, 28, 29, 31, and 35.
Well, cash 3 $500 midday numbers 134. The evening 414. Cash 4 $5,000 midday 4067. Evening numbers 1487. Fireball was 1 in both the midday and the evening. Cash pop of 7 in the midday with an evening cash pop of 12.
2 exciting bonus promotions going on right now. It pays to be a Mississippi Lottery insider. To become an insider, just visit the website, mslottery.com. That is free for you. You've got the Pink Panther Diamond Tripler bonus promotion. It pounces on, and it's going to happen later today. The 5th drawing in that promotion. The Mississippi Lottery will award cash prizes of $15,000, $10,000, $5,000, and a couple of $100 gift cards. Winning cities will be announced exclusively to Lottery Insiders first, and then we will let you know who won as well. Follow along on their social media and at mslottery.com. And a reminder that the NASCAR Powerball Playoff is going. 15 lucky winners will be going to the playoff. The second winner will be announced next Thursday, April 24th, and will receive not only $8,500 in cash, but $3,500 for an early bird bonus, a total of $12,000. All winners will qualify for the National NASCAR Powerball Playoff, racing toward that $1 million grand prize.
Amazing.
You'll throw a couple of winners at us?
You got it, brother. Match 5 winners, a Gulfport man, $800 on a ticket from Clark Oil Company, number 33 in Gulfport. And a Horn Lake man won $1,000 on a ticket from Sid's Market Highway in South Haven, Mississippi.
Had a $2,500 Mega Millions winner, Meridian Woman, on a scratch-off from Shell Food Mart in Marion. And a couple of $1,000 winner on a $1,000 winners on a $20 200X Cash Blitz scratch-off. A Florence man got a ticket at Circle K in Vicksburg, and a Gulfport man won $1,000 on a ticket from Hot Spot Market in Gulfport. Hot Spot indeed. Let's see. Let's give you a few sports headlines as we get the baseball weekend rolling. Several years ago, they made a change and moved more of the games to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, giving teams a chance to get home and be with families or friends for the Easter holiday on Sunday. So you got a bunch of action that's getting started tonight. Southern Miss hosting Georgia State back at Pete Taylor Park after an 8-game road trip. So the Golden Eagles are going to try and get it going as they jump back into Sun Belt Conference play. Game 1 tonight at Pete Taylor Park. The Ole Miss baseball team is on the road. They are in Columbia, South Carolina, taking on the South Carolina Gamecocks, who are near the bottom of the SEC standings. You got Missouri sitting down there at 0-15, so they're not all the way in the cellar, but it has been a struggle for South Carolina. Ole Miss going to try and get rolling after losing 2 of 3 in a hotly contested series in Oxford last weekend to the Tennessee Volunteers. A little bit different type opponent this weekend, but got to do it on the road in Columbia. Series gets started this evening. Mississippi State will not start its series until tomorrow night. All 3 of Mississippi State games this weekend nationally televised. SEC Network on Friday, ESPN on Saturday, and ESPN2 on Sunday. I don't think you have to read into any heathenism for Mississippi State for playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That was dictated by television. So you can have fun with that, but that's the reason that they are playing the 3 on the weekend. And good news for both the Mississippi State and Ole Miss women's golf teams. Both of them have advanced to from stroke play into match play at the SEC Championship. They are playing at the Pelican Golf Club down in Clearwater, Florida, outside of Tampa. South Carolina, LSU, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida finished in the top 8 of stroke play. So you have all 16 teams go. They all play stroke play for 2 days. And the top 8 then advance to match play. It's a format that mirrors what they do to crown a national champion. Ole Miss's Caitlin McNabb won the individual title with a 5 under 65 in her final round. It was the second lowest three-day score in SEC tournament history. 201 was her total score. Caitlin McNabb just 2 weeks ago was in Augusta, Georgia, playing in the Augusta National Women's Amateur, the prestigious event that has grown in stature over the last few years at Augusta. It leads into the Masters, which happened last week as well. Mississippi State is the reigning SEC women's golf champion, and so they are trying to reclaim that title. Quarterfinal matches about to get underway this morning, with the winners squaring off this afternoon in the semifinals, and then you'll have the finals coming up tomorrow. This marks the second year for the SEC championship to be held at the Pelican Golf Club. 2025 event will mark the sixth consecutive in which the championship is held over 5 days, with match play happening in the final 2 days of the tournament. So, very good. You've got semifinals streaming online at SEC Network Plus if you want to watch those.
Hey, bud, I was say, before you go any further, we do have softball, baseball playoffs are starting for 1 through 4A. The rest will start about a little later, in about a week. And then you also have the end of the junior college season will be coming to us on April 26th. So get out and check them out while you can, because we're getting to the end of the high school and junior college baseball and softball seasons.
And that's all the sports, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got tennis state championships that are happening. You've got baseball and softball, as you just mentioned, track and field state championships. Lot going on over this final month of the school year. That's what's crazy, though.
I mean, I don't see how the parents do it, buddy. I mean, I don't see how you guys do it. Get them to school, get them here, get them there, and then you got all the games, and it just never stops until summer, and it's amazing.
Yes, we have lacrosse in Memphis tonight.
Wow.
So
yeah,
I'm going to head home when we finish this, and then keep rolling a little farther north later this afternoon. We go into the second half of SEC play in baseball. Just give you a quick update on the standings. Texas atop the standings in their first year in the SEC competing in baseball, 13-2 through their first 15 games of conference play. Then you've got Arkansas 1 game back at 12-3. Tennessee is 11-4, so 2 games back. Georgia and LSU are both 10-5. Georgia had a big series win at home last weekend against Arkansas, who was, I guess, the number 2 team in the country. And LSU was swept on the road last weekend against Auburn. Auburn and Ole Miss are both 9-6 in conference play at the halfway point. Alabama, Vanderbilt, both 8-7. You got Oklahoma at 7-8, then Kentucky at 6-9, South Carolina 6-9, Mississippi State 5-10. They got some work to do in the second half of conference play if they want to be a postseason team. Florida's 4-11. South Carolina, who Ole Miss is playing this weekend, 2-13, and then Missouri 0-15 so far. We had a guest on yesterday afternoon on Sports Talk Mississippi, and I asked him, hey, what's more likely, for Missouri to go 0-30 in SEC play, or for them to go 3-27? And he's like, 0-30.
I'm pulling for the 0-30. Yeah, I want to see that.
That's tough. Can you imagine going through a conference slate and not winning a single game when you play 30 of them?
Yeah. Well, you know,
it's on the table. Missouri basketball team had an 0-18 mark in the regular season a couple of years ago.
It's their own fault. They joined the SEC, so get better. You know, that's not my problem.
Scott Waller will join us on the other side of this break, President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. We'll talk about what is on the menu today for MEC's annual meeting, as got a lot of folks that are coming into the Jackson Convention Complex. That'll really get rolling about an hour from right now. Thanks for being with us. Gorgeous day in the Magnolia State. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
From the Venable Glass.
Shaping Mississippi politics each morning. Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk Mississippi.
Rolling on through this first hour of Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Scott Waller, always good to get up early. He probably would have to get up early anyway for a big day like this, but kind enough to...
normally would, yes.
Yeah. Scott Waller, President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. Annual meeting day, one of three of the big events that your organization does every year. We're certainly thrilled to be here again this year. What's the theme today?
Well, it's really just a continuation of what we have been working through our last few meetings of our Work Future initiative of how we continue to look at the future in a way that we are building it to work for us and make Mississippi a stronger, better place and be able to, really provide the opportunities for economic growth. If you think about what's happened in Mississippi over the last few years, I know you've talked about this on your show. I've heard you talk about the fact that we were number 2 in the nation in GDP growth in 2024. That's such an amazing thing to think about.
Can you give me context on that? I mean, that's one of those things that people hear GDP and they just start seeing numbers, and it's almost like a math quiz spinning in your head. But what's the context?
The context of it, though, is at what rate is the economy growing? How much capital investment's being made in the economy? And when you think about, from an economic development standpoint, what's happened really over the last 2 years, beginning with the 2 major announcements with the data centers that AWS and Compass are doing in the state, and then you think about all the other investment that's being made, and that's just the new investment. You add on top of that the investment that a lot of companies are continuing to do. I haven't really looked closely at the details of it, but I got something from MDA yesterday, and in all the chaos of getting ready for a meeting.
Sure.
But GE is looking
$12 million
is looking at right there in Batesville. So it's those kind of things. Just when you start seeing that type of investment, it's like with everything else, that money turns over again and again, and that's what grows the economy. And for so long, Mississippi lagged behind, in so many different ways. But right now, I think we are poised to really begin to see additional investment like that. So I think that's why what we're doing at MEC in terms of bringing the business community together to work in a kind of unified way of building our state and promoting success among those businesses, because what happens is that then creates jobs. And if those investments bring jobs, those jobs are, one of the things Governor Reeves has really spent a lot of time on is making sure that the investments are coming in or bringing in jobs that are paying higher than what the average is.
Sure.
The average rate is. And that's why our personal income growth has been among the best in the nation. And over a 2-quarter period of 24, we were number 3rd in the nation in GDP growth. And I think we were in the top 10 overall. So, I mean, when you look at it from that perspective, that really tells you there's a lot of good things happening in Mississippi. And we're just excited to be a part of it. And I think the businesses that support MEC, we're so fortunate we got all sectors of the economy that are part of our organization. They understand the value of growing our state, and they understand the value of having the voice that we provide as an organization to make sure that we have a very pro-business policy approach to creating, economic growth.
What role did the tax conversation during the legislative session this year play in kind of the continued growth, the continued attractiveness in business development? Because that's more of a byproduct, or not a byproduct. That is more of a plus, I would think, for employees and attracting workers than it is just for the businesses themselves.
That is you're exactly right. I mean, that's exactly what that is. It's more of a reason to say, hey, come to Mississippi. Your actual personal income is going to be low. We already have a lower cost of living than most places. So add those two things together, and it makes it more attractive to attract employees. So that's a big part of it. But there were other aspects of that bill too that we were very, very happy to see, and that is the investment that's being made in infrastructure.
Sure.
That's something that we've worked on at MEC for almost a decade, and understand that without that strong infrastructure, you're not going to get the type of overall economic growth and that you need. When it comes to someone looking at where they're going to locate, where they're going to expand, workforce is always number one. Are we going to have the workforce available to it? But then you gotta have that highway system, that transportation system to move your goods and get to places. So to see the investment that's going to be made, and I like what they've done. They've phased it in over time, so it's not a big hit right off the bat. And then they've created a way that over time it continues to grow. So I think that's one of the things that we've always talked about at MEC is in 87, the vision they had to create the 4-lane program was amazing. The problem was they didn't think about the maintenance that would be required, 30 years later.
Yeah.
So that's where we feel like we have been able to get some additional dollars there. And so you think about, you had the phase out of the personal income tax, you had money being put into infrastructure, you had other things it was looking at to help improve overall, the economy and the opportunities here in the state. And I think that's a big part of why we're seeing our state continue to grow and our economic situation be among the best in the nation right now.
Scott Waller, President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. Going to hang with me for another segment. We'll talk a little bit more to start the 7 o'clock hour. We're going to talk with Scott throughout the show. A bunch of guests coming your way this morning, and there are a lot of things that are happening here today, and some of those have to do with workforce development, some of them have to do with training, some of them have to do with education. We're going to get to all of that. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
Mornings with Richard Cross, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
What else?
And always on the SuperTalk app.
This hour of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you are not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They provide a full range of employer services, plus a custom plan that fits you. You can give them a call today. The number is 601-206-7966, or go to MWGEmployerServices.com. Mornings with Richard Cross on the road this morning. It was dark when we started. The sun has come up, getting set for a gorgeous day across the Magnolia State as we broadcast live from the annual meeting for the Mississippi Economic Council. We are at the Jackson Convention Complex. Scott Waller is my guest, President and CEO of MEC. I'd love if we could highlight a few things that are happening kind of in the business community in Mississippi. You mentioned a second ago the announcement that came from GE. I think I read a $12 million investment. It's going to add about 100 jobs over the course of the next 3 years. And so much is about attracting new business. But when you have businesses that say, we're good here and we want to grow here, there's something special about that and what it means. I think that even applies to attracting new businesses when they look around and they go, okay, they're here, and now they're choosing to grow here beyond going and finding a new spot.
And I think that's a big part of it. And I mean, we don't work in the direct recruitment side of things at MEC. As the State Chamber of Commerce, we're focused more on the legislative, regulatory environment. How do we make sure it's good for all businesses to be successful? But as I understand it, a lot of times when a business is looking, they'll visit with other businesses in the area and say, what's it like to do business here? What's the employment like? What's the workforce availability? So I think to really be successful, where we play our biggest role is focusing on those things like workforce development and how we address those. I mean, today's event, our morning sessions are really going to kind of highlight that. It's kind of what's from the provider perspective, from the education perspective in training a workforce. We're also going to have some industry professionals that are going to talk about what they do to attract the workforce, both from a healthcare, professional services like accounting, industry like Nissan. People like that are going to talk today about how they approach the process of finding that workforce. But one of the panels we have this morning that I think speaks directly to making sure we have the type of business environment for people to grow and people to come is on childcare. and the impact that child care continues to have. COVID kind of shined a light on it, that it really was an issue before, but once that happened, it became a really big issue. And don't misunderstand me. None of these issues I just talked about are unique to Mississippi. All of my counterparts around the country are dealing with the same types of things. We have been working with our national association on a workforce coalition that I've been fortunate enough to chair for the last couple of years. And when we have meetings and we talk about it, we talk about the things that are impacting it. And child care continues to be like probably the number one thing outside of the direct training and availability of people. It's the availability of child care so that we can get more people in the workforce. And we've done the research. If we could just find ways to get parents in the workforce that have child care issues and raise our workforce participation rate by 1%, that would mean 12,000 more people in the workforce in Mississippi. So that's some big numbers there that we're talking about trying to accomplish.
And unemployment numbers are at about 4%, is that right?
Maybe a little lower. I haven't seen them, but I mean, we've been running at fairly historic lows on unemployment, and I think that the problem is the people who are trying to get into the workforce are finding jobs. It's trying to find ways to get more people into the workforce, and I think this is one of the issues that keeps them out.
All of the cheerleading from MEC, all of the recruitment from MDA and the state doesn't happen if you don't have someone in the governor's mansion that is pro-business community, pro-economic development. And I feel like there's been and this is not to knock anybody pre-Haley Barbour, but going back to the time when Haley Barbour was governor, it felt like there was a greater emphasis on recruiting businesses to Mississippi. And then Phil Bryant, following Haley Barbour, carried that a step farther. And now it feels like it's business recruitment on steroids with Tate Reeves. I have said and argued, and I think I've even said to him in a conversation that we have, from my perspective, your crowning achievement as governor, or if I'm not talking directly to him, his crowning achievement as governor has been what he's been able to attract, what his administration has been able to attract. And I know there are a lot of players that are involved, but the guy whose name is at the top of the letterhead is the one that gets the most credit, and that's credit that's deserved. What has Tate Reeves done that has allowed this runaway freight train of economic development and businesses coming to the state? What has he done specifically that has allowed this to work?
I think it's he's put a true emphasis on it. Early in his first term, he met with some of our key leaders at MEC and talked about it. He says, if I'm not focusing on economic development, then we've got other issues, because that should be my number one priority. That should be what I'm really doing. And when other stuff come in and distract that's where we have problems. And of course, then he dealt with COVID and he dealt with other things coming through, and then we've come out of that with such a force of trying to grow that. And I think he's really made it his priority. And I think that's the reason that you're seeing the efforts take place as it relates to much larger capital investment being made in the state. And again, the next step with this, and we were talked about this, and I'm trying to my days are running together, but the next step to this is how do we now move to capitalize on it even more by you have all this availability from a data perspective and technology perspective that's coming to the state. How do we get all the other companies that support it and come around it or be there? And even with some of our long-term companies, like I was talking yesterday to the president at Toyota Mississippi, saying we still want to make sure we're focusing on getting stronger in more suppliers in as we go into the next generation of manufacturing there. So I mean, those are the kind of things I think we're seeing right now. Is there's an emphasis not only attracting the new, but now how do you take advantage of what you have?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point, because you've got established businesses who have made the investment, who have made Mississippi their home, and you don't want to get enamored with the new, let's bring in more, and forget about the people who have already committed, right? Whether you're talking about Toyota or Nissan, and you're talking about 20 years in the rearview mirror since they've been here now, or if you want to go back 100 years and look at a company like Ingalls or some of the refineries on the coast and how much they play into the economic success of the state of Mississippi, how do you make sure that you are taking care of those businesses that are already here and not just focusing on new business?
You know, what's the old adage in real estate? Location, location, location.
Yeah. I
think in our case, it's workforce, workforce, workforce. And Eagles is a perfect example. They hire so many people, and they're constantly looking for quality employees. And how do we make sure we're providing those things as a state from a policy perspective, as an organization, MEC, that's promoting and working with, like our Office of Workforce Development, Accelerate, and making sure we're doing those things that create those opportunities. If you don't have the workforce, it doesn't matter what's going on, you're not going to be able to grow. Yeah. And I think that's where we've really got to focus our attention. And one of the things that we're trying to really do is look at it from an in-demand job perspective. What is the training that's needed, and how do we start to align the needs that the businesses have with our educational system from K-12 on up? And that's the key. And we're getting better. We're getting much better at it, but we still got work to do.
You know, so much of the conversation around workforce development is about training the next generation of workers who are already here and making sure the people who live here have the training they need to fill these jobs. What about attracting new people to Mississippi?
That is something. I was talking with someone yesterday that's in our Leadership Mississippi class. He said, look, I'm one of those people that moved here. He says, I love it here. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really just a case of businesses understanding. And I think what's been happening in Mississippi over the last 4 or 5 years, and particularly whether it's the improvements we're making in education, whether it's just the overall image of our state, the economic investments to be made, people are looking at us differently, and we've got to continue to tell our story ourselves and not let somebody else tell it for us, because we got one heck of a really good story to tell.
Scott Waller, President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. We're broadcasting live today from the Jackson Convention Complex. MEC's annual meeting. Daisy Carter-Slater going to join us coming up next. She's the executive director of Excel by 5. What is that? Well, we'll all find out coming up next. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back with you right after this.
Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Sometimes I lead, sometimes I follow. This time I go where she wants me to go.
So, Lance, you know me well enough by now that you know I'm a breakfast guy.
Oh, yeah.
You kind of laugh at me about that, right? Because you tell me I got an apple fritter as big as my head, and I'm going to eat it at 9:30 this morning.
Yeah, you're not.
And
doing
there is a table over here of muffins and fruit and pastries and whatnot.
Man,
and I'm about 2 hours behind on breakfast right now.
Well, you got a break.
If you hear that
up,
growling, it's my stomach. We are scheduled to have a guest that may or may not happen in the next few minutes. I want to give you a chance right here because I think you need to tell this story more than I hope I'm not throwing you under the bus. You sent me a message last night. Jean Massey is going to be with us coming up in our next segment. She's executive director at Ascent to 55%. With MEC and the Mississippi Propel Education Forum. She is a lifelong educator and has worked in the public school system. And you had a very curious thing that you wanted me to ask Jean Massey about. Do you want to share that?
Yes. So, Chancellor Boyce was one of my principals many years ago, and, they had a paddle. And if you stepped out of line, you got it, man. And they didn't make any apologies, and your parents were thankful that they did. And Principal Boyce was just, awesome. And then so he moves on, and Jean Massey becomes our principal. And as the I always ask Dr. Boyce, hey, what did you do with the paddle? And oh man, I didn't. So I figured he probably handed that off to Dr. Jean Massey, who is a brilliant and amazing lady. Love her to death, and they don't make them any better. But yeah, when you're the principal, you got to kind of carry a big stick, and she did. So I was just curious if Jean has the paddle that had been passed down.
We will check it. There's a time where the paddle in a principal's office was displayed in a place of prominence.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was
partly as a deterrent, partly as a badge of honor. We are, what, at this point, 2.5 decades removed from corporal punishment, as it were, in elementary schools and junior highs and high schools. And I don't know. I guess on the whole, that's probably a good thing. But there was something too. And look, you got kids that are on their way to school this morning that are in cars with mom and dad. All right, let me give you a little conversation prompt on the way to school this morning. Ask mom and dad about paddling at school. So most kids, you have some parents that don't use any type of corporal punishment. That's fine. That's their decision. You raise your kids the best way you can. And then you have some that very sparingly have spankings. And, you know what a spanking is. Most kids know what a spanking is. I think spankings today are different than spankings or paddlings were when we were growing up. It was a different time.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
There were levels of it, right? I mean, you would hear about grandmothers that used switches, which is very much the go get one off the tree or the branch, and then it evolved into I don't know.
I always was curious how it became corporal punishment.
I love that she's going to get mad at me maybe for sharing this. I just had a wife, my wife, Jane, driving to school this morning. She's like, please don't go down the corporal punishment road on the radio this morning. No, I was thinking,
it's humorous.
Kids, if you could get kids to ask parents, hey, what are they talking about paddling at school?
Yeah, these kids have no idea. And I absolutely loved Dr. Boyce and Dr. Massey as principals. They were wonderful leaders. And again, it wasn't something that was always every day. But yeah, the paddle was prominent, and you stayed in line. And I will say this: they principled some amazing kids. I mean, you have people like me,
That's right.
Josh Harkins, and a ton of just great folks. So the work that they did, we greatly appreciate. I don't know if I'd be in the position I'm in without the great education that they were able to provide. So funny times though, very different today. And you'd get a pop on the rear if you came off the bus if Coach D.M. Howie was standing there.
Yeah, just a good starter to the day, just making sure you're awake. All right, we've got Daisy Carter-Slater. She joins us now, Executive Director of Excel by 5. We're broadcasting live from MEC's annual meeting today. Daisy, good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for stopping by. Excel by 5. Let's start very basic. What is that?
Excel by 5 is a community-based organization. We're 20 years old. We celebrated our 20th anniversary on last year, going into our 21st. So we're a community-based. We're a nonprofit organization. We are all about early childhood development, and we focus on 0 to 5 in the family.
I'm assuming that 5 is the 5-year-old that we are talking about. What is the focus there? Because there's so much. I mean, you were talking about the formative years. You probably remember seeing the poster years ago that floated around that says, everything I need to know in life I learned by kindergarten.
Right.
It's amazing how much learning happens and how much is absorbed between birth and 5 years old in those formative years.
Right. We remind people, we have to constantly remind people that early child development starts at 0, not 5. It started at infancy and it goes up until age 5.
And some people would argue even before birth.
Absolutely. That's why we encourage our mothers to read to the bump. It's very encouraging for them to read early and often. So that's what we love. We want to remind our families and those who are in the field of early child development that consistency, repetition, and always doing it often, especially reading to our little ones, is important.
That's where I was going to go. You mentioned reading a couple of times there. if you had to highlight a single most important thing for early development, is that it? Is
Yes.
it parents reading to children?
Yes, parents reading to children often and often. Often.
Just make it part of the bedtime routine.
Oh, yeah. Consistency. Kids love consistency. They love organization. They love when you have a goal in mind and putting it forth and effort, and bringing them along that process. They're very motivated as well.
Kids grow fast.
They do.
Too,
and we want them to grow and work.
That's 100% true. But I was going to say, if you're looking for like an offshoot benefit to that, so the child is benefiting.
Yes.
I would argue that time that you invest with a child is every bit as valuable for a parent as it is just for the child.
Absolutely. Our parents are getting more than they rarely sometimes believe that they do. They're giving something and giving. It's called serve and return. What you put out in to your children, they're most likely to give it back.
Yeah. In terms of resources that are available for parents, if you've got young parents, new parents who are saying I want my kid to be ready to go when it's time for pre-K, when it's time for kindergarten, what are some practical things that parents can be doing with young children? Because we know that's a chaotic time in life also.
Yep. One thing they can do is reach out to their Excel by 5 community. We're covered in 43 communities in Mississippi, so we're going up and higher in our numbers. But however, we have 43 communities that they can reach out to our Excel by 5 communities for those resources. We have our resource centers located throughout Mississippi that can provide you with all the resources that you need. If you're a child care center, or if you're a mom that's looking for manipulatives, instruments, or toys that will help you in your process of learning. And they can also download the app called Vroom.
Vroom,
yes.
Like VROOM.
Correct. Yes, it's an app that will give you all the information that you could possibly need, such as if you're changing your baby. In Vroom, they'll give you a little message that say, "Hey, while you're changing your baby, why don't you sing to your baby? Why don't you recite the ABCs or tell a bedtime story?" Or it'll give you an activity during bath time, or even activities while you're in the car on a ride home. So yeah.
It's great stuff. It's all about engaging with children, right? And sometimes it feels silly, and sometimes it feels like, I don't know.
Yeah, we tell our parents now to talk to your children. Even though they can't talk, you can talk to them. Yeah. And that's that serve and return part. And we want them to have the serve and return. It increases their executive function. And when they have great executive function, they can make decisions. They have time management skills. They'll bring more. They'll help with the workforce economy here in Mississippi.
It's a long-term play.
Oh,
it's something to start out with. Daisy Carter-Slater, Executive Director at Excel by 5. What's the website where people can go and can find those resource centers, find the communities where you're located?
We're at www.excelby5.com.
EXCEL by 5.com, or that app. That may be the easiest part to remember. Car sound, like a sound that you would make when you're talking to one of those.
You got
vroom, vroom. Vroom is the app. Check that out online. Daisy, thanks so much for coming by. Continued success. Incredibly important work you're doing.
Thank you.
This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're going to take a quick time out. Gene Massey will join us coming up next. We're going to talk with her about the Propel Education Forum and Ascent to 55%. And we'll ask about Lance's question about the paddle and whether or not that was handed down and still exists somewhere along the way. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Back with you right after this.
Great and small, but I've never found enough like my rose.
This segment of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
From Sumner to Summit to Summerall, Richard has something for you. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Look, Chris Stapleton on a Thursday morning. Thanks for being with us. Mornings with Richard Cross, broadcasting live from the Jackson Convention Complex. Today is the annual meeting for MEC, one of their three big events across the calendar each year, and I am pleased to be joined now by Jean Massey. She is Executive Director, Ascent to 55%. We'll talk about Ascent in just a moment. That's through MEC, works with Mississippi Propel Education Forum. I have to ask you what Lance and I were talking about a little while ago. Apparently, he had more than one meeting with a paddle back when Dr. Boyce was president at principal at Northwest Rankin. Said you followed. He is convinced that you are now the keeper of the paddle. Can you?
I am not the keeper of the paddle.
Okay.
No, Lance, I don't have it, so I can't give it to you.
Yes,
as a
I wanted
souvenir.
it. Yeah, I wanted it.
I'm sure you did, but I do not have the paddle. Richard Morrison may have it, so you
that's
might want
right.
to check with him.
That's right.
I think Lance feels like there might be an ownership claim there because of his frequency of use. I don't know.
He could be. We'll check on that and see. If Richard Morrison has it, I'll get it to you.
You're
Lance.
the best. You're the best.
You and I were talking off air a little bit about Leadership Mississippi.
Yes.
That is a program with which you are involved and have been involved. It's you don't run the entire program. This is your 51 for Leadership Mississippi, which is incredible. We're talking half a century at this point.
Yes, we are. It's the second oldest leadership program in the country.
Oh, really?
Yes, we have 45 individuals that began on Tuesday. Phenomenal class from all across the state.
I think there are people that need to hear a little bit more about Leadership Mississippi. There are lots of local programs, different communities. I live in Oxford. Leadership Lafayette is a program for Lafayette County that has existed for a number of time, I don't know, a long time. It's probably been 15 years ago that I went through that program. I've still got friends. I've still got business acquaintances that were in that class with me. What do people across the state need to know about the state version, Leadership Mississippi?
In some ways, it's like your local versions. We have the professional development that our individuals go through on leadership, on how to work. But the big thing is it lets them understand what's not just what's in your local community, but how your local community fits into the entire state. And it also lets you understand that what's happening on the coast may not be the exact same thing that's happening in the Delta, but we all have similar problems. Mm-hmm. And we can work together to solve those problems, because the only way our state's going to be successful as a state is if all parts of our state can prosper. So making those relationships, not just in your community, but across the entire state, is so valuable. And like you had those relationships inside your organization, now you have those relationships completely across the state.
It certainly is something that makes a lot of sense. I'm assuming that there are people that are listening that might be intrigued by this, but they I don't know, in terms of a time commitment, what does that look like? So what is the time commitment for attendees?
We will open applications for the next year's class beginning in October, November. The selection comes out in early January. We have 4 face-to-face sessions where we do across the state, Jackson, the coast. We're going to Cleveland this year and to Starkville for 2 days at each time. And it's not a huge commitment, but it does take time. Yeah. But the value from it is worth every minute you spend in it.
Certainly investing in yourself or your company, investing in you if you go that route. All right, so tell me about Ascent to 55%. What is this program?
Ascent to 55% is working to make sure that we have certifications, associate degrees, bachelor's degrees or above for our adult population in Mississippi to improve our state's economy and to improve our individuals' success as a family.
Yeah. So 55% is the target percentage.
55% is our target by 2030.
Okay.
That's not where we need to get. We need more adults than that with those post-secondary certifications and degrees. We've got 55% by 2030, 60% by 2035, and we really need to go beyond that, because in Mississippi, over 70% of the jobs are going to require some post-secondary training.
Yeah. Where is that number right now?
That number right now has grown from when the Education Achievement Council set the goal. Mm-hmm. From 44%, we're at 49%.
Okay. So knocking on the door and probably an attainable goal. And you said by 2030.
2030.
All right. So the clock's ticking a little bit to hit that goal. You laid out a number of avenues there, because we've heard for years and years college isn't for everyone. It's certainly something that is encouraged. But as high school students are moving toward graduation and they've got to figure out what's next, it feels like it's important for people to know that there are a lot of options. And it doesn't have to be going to a 4-year college.
That's right. We've got to change our definition of college to begin with.
Okay.
College is not what a lot of times when you look at college, you think a 4-year university.
Mm-hmm.
College is a lot more than 4-year university. You think about everything we have to offer in Mississippi through our 2-year programs. Our community colleges, we have those 15 community colleges that are best in the country, and they have multiple campuses.
It's an incredible system.
It's an incredible system. And they not only offer associate degrees in academic areas and career and technical areas, they also have a separate workforce development side that you can earn valuable certifications that can lead you to a pathway back to an associate degree if you want it. That associate degree can then lead you to a bachelor's degree or above in either the career and technical side now or the academic side. Our universities have done a great job of adding Bachelor's of Applied Science. Mm-hmm. At one time, if you got a career and technical associate degree, an applied science degree, it was what we think of as a terminal degree. That was all you could do with it.
Right.
No longer is that true. You can take that applied science degree now, and you can go on to Mississippi State, Ole Miss, several of our other universities, and get a Bachelor's of Applied Science.
You know, I operated in the sports space for a long time, and we talk about rivalries in college athletics, Ole Miss and Mississippi State being chief among them. But on the career training side, the workforce development side, it really is impressive to see how well Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Southern Miss, community colleges have all worked together kind of for the betterment.
That's one of the things that we can be proud of in this state. Dr. Susan Seals from Mississippi State is on a panel that we have later today that will talk a lot about how Mississippi State has worked with those entities that you talked about to develop programs to help our individuals move forward.
Well, so that relationship at Mississippi State and Dr. Boyce, the chancellor at Ole Miss, obviously a former colleague of yours as well, somebody that was intimately involved with the community college system in Mississippi, and I think recognizes how important that is and how important that relationship needs to be.
I agree with you. When you've had someone that's come through a system like Dr. Boyce has, from the high school setting to the community college setting, the IHL board, now at Ole Miss, he understands all those areas, and that's what we need, are individuals that can connect the dots. We can't keep working in silos. It's not just K-12 doing this, community college doing this, and IHLs, or our 4 years, our public or private doing this. It's got to be all of us working together in a seamless piece for our adults. We have over 320,000 adults in this state that have some college credit but no degree, no certification.
Right.
How do we bring them back in a seamless manner to get them a certification that would allow them to be more successful?
You've used the word certificate or certification a lot. Dr. Courtney Taylor, when we talk with her from Accelerate, she talks about certificate programs as well. Can we put a face with that name? What are we talking about specifically? Because I think people hear that and they're like, okay, a certificate, but what does that mean, and what does that entitle me to or open a door for?
Sure. On the workforce development side, in our community colleges, they have programs that are like 15 hours, and I can get a level 1 in welding.
Okay.
But if I want to go back and do additional, I can do another 15 hours, have 30, and have a higher level of certification.
Okay.
I can do 45 and get another certification. A lot of jobs, diesel mechanic, diesel technician, I get that lower level, but I go back and get that next certification. It's a bump in salary. It's a bump in pay.
Okay.
You know, so those certifications that lead to a good job that can have a sustainable wage for my family are the certifications we're talking about.
And largely those are in trades.
Most of those are in trades. There are a lot of little certifications, even in engineering, in accounting. There are different certifications along the way that help you move forward.
Well, and I guess no different than when you would hear teachers in the past talked about working toward board certification, and once you have that, it leads to a pay bump, gives you the ability to advance as well.
That's true. You think about teaching, you start out with maybe a child care, working in a child care area, and then you move up to a teacher. Then you move up in administration or to that board.
Yeah. Great stuff. Gene Massey visiting with us this morning. Thanks so much for your time. It's a pleasure visiting with you, and a lot of good stuff going on with both Leadership Mississippi and Ascent to 55%. We'll track those numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you. More coming up with you as we broadcast live from MEC's annual meeting. We are at the Jackson Convention Complex. Quick time out. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Morning, partner. The sun is up, the coffee is on, and you're starting your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross here on Super Talk Mississippi.
That may be the best sausage biscuit I've ever eaten in my life.
You look like you're enjoying it, man. You're making me hungry.
My stomach was about to start eating itself.
I heard it went
Yeah. Good morning once again. If you're just joining us, thanks for tuning in. If you've been with us since 6 o'clock, thanks. Glad to have you along. Hope the coffee is going down just right this morning. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. We're broadcasting live from MEC's annual meeting, which gets started. Folks starting to kind of trickle in at 8 o'clock hour. They will start pouring in through the doors. How big a crowd are you expecting today?
We expect somewhere between 800 to 1,000 for the day.
Yeah.
Now we probably only have about 700 or so at our lunch. That's typically the size that we have, but it's one of our nicer meetings. But by the way, I was just going to tell you, I opted for the chicken biscuit and it was just as good. So
glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. That's the voice of Scott Waller, President CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. I know you told us earlier this morning that MEC is not involved actively in the recruiting of new businesses to the state, and certainly understand that piece of it, that there are different roles and different ways that you go through this entire process. But when you look at industry and you think about the workforce that exists and is being trained in Mississippi today, are there industries that make more sense from a recruiting standpoint than others?
Well, I think there have been through the years, and I think it's really the industries that are providing what we labeled several years ago as middle skill jobs. In other words, those I know in your previous segment when you were talking with Gene about the certifications and what all that meant, and kind of that's more the trade side of things, and that's been really a big push, because for so long that had been kind of put to the back burner and everything. The whole concept is, if you're going to college, it's a 4-year approach, not a short-term approach with certifications, not a short-term approach with associates, and I think that's starting to change. And as far as I think advanced manufacturing continues to be one of the key target areas as we grow. And if you look at what most of the economic developers bring in, that's kind of in that category. Mm-hmm. But I think for us to go as a state, we have to not only grow that, but with that comes professional, or more of all of them are professional jobs, but more of the the jobs that would be considered your accountants, your engineers, and things like that.
Sure.
So I think that's where we really need to be focusing our attention on making sure we're working with our universities and our other educational partners to figure out, okay, how do we work with them in a way that the engineering programs at our universities understand there are X number of companies in the state that are going to be needing to fill spots, and what are the qualifications, what are the needs. But as far as the industry sector goes, I mean, we've done a pretty good job over the years of kind of identifying things like automotive and some of the other areas that we want to look at. I mean, welding, as it relates to not just shipbuilding on the coast, but a lot of the jobs in manufacturing require that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there for us to continue to push through that process. And the biggest thing I think that's helping us, that's going to help us, this is the short-term effect will not be as great as the long-term effect. But I really believe the career coach program that's been put in place, which is this year is year one of all 82 counties having the opportunity to have career coaches. As that builds out and that connection between the business community and the educational sector and helping students understand, okay, these jobs are in my area,
sure,
where I grew up, where I live, where my family is, where I want to stay. What education do I need to take those jobs on? And you'll see, if we do this properly and you make that connection between the businesses and those in education that says, okay, here's what we have, here's what we need, you'll start to see that understanding of there's a career pathway that leads to a good job that keeps me at home and I can really be successful. And I think that's where we're going to, I think if we look back even 5 years from now, but definitely 10 years from now, much like with the third grade reading gate. So you really
Sure.
now seeing the benefits of it.
Yeah.
We're going to see the same type of benefits from that. And I think that's where you can really get specific to the area where you are. To your point, whether it's the Golden Triangle, whether it's Northeast Mississippi, whether it's the coast, whether what's happening now in the Oxford area, to really kind of bring everybody on the same page of this is what our region needs, this is what our region wants. That's how you get there.
Whether it's conversation with Gene or with you or with Courtney Taylor at Accelerate or with our community college presidents, I'm more convinced than ever that the message to high school students, because I think that maybe even younger than that, is if you are willing to work, there are all the resources in the world at not a lot of cost to you right here in Mississippi to give you the tools to go make a great living that will be able to support a family and be able to save some money and take some vacations. And we hear about all the shortages and all the crazy stuff that's going on. Opportunities exist here in Mississippi if you are willing to take advantage of them.
There are so many opportunities. If they'll just seize them, it's going to be the future is going to be good.
Yeah. Scott Waller, CEO, President of the Mississippi Economic Council. We've got more coming up with you as we move toward the 8 o'clock hour. We'll start things off with Dr. Derek Reed, CTE and Workforce Development for Pascagoula and Gautier School Districts. This is Mornings with Richard Cross. Thanks for spending part of your Thursday with us.
No matter where you're from, Abbeville, Batesville, DeIberville, or any other ville in the SIP, you're starting your day off right. Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk, Mississippi.
For a while, maybe longer if I do.
8 o'clock hour. Had time for at least 2 cups of coffee. Ought to be wide awake. We're glad to be with you. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. I'm on my third, but they're small cups, so not gonna keep count. C Spire text line open to you, 601-879-4395. The best teams know how to get even better. That's why C Spire constantly enhances their wireless, fiber internet, and business solutions for you. To learn more, visit cspire.com today. C Spire, inspired by you. We're broadcasting live today from the Jackson Convention Complex for the annual meeting for the Mississippi Economic Council. Nearly 1,000 people will be here later today. Business leaders from all over the state coming together to try to make sure that a good thing keeps on rolling. Talking a lot about workforce development today. And joining us now, happy to introduce to you my next guest, Dr. Derek Reed. He is Director of CTE and Workforce Development at the Pascagoula Gautier School District. And I want to start there because this is a little unique. I did ask you, I was like, hold on, that's 2 schools but 1 district, right?
Right, yes, sir.
There are a lot of people that listen to this show that think that should be the norm across the state of Mississippi instead of all of the individual districts. How does that work, though, with Pascagoula and Gautier kind of under the same umbrella?
So, it actually works. We have separate extracurriculars, so they have, their own sports. We have ours. This year we're actually going to be in the same district, so we'll be playing each other again in the same conference. But we share CTE. We share a central maintenance hub, but we have satellites. Same way with transportation. They have the east side, west side of transportation, but they have one director. But it works. We get along. We always have in CTE. And so it's just like been something that we're just used to.
So, we have evolved over time. There was a time not that long ago, I'd like to think, where you had shop class and you had home ec. And we don't call them those things anymore. All of that falls under the CTE umbrella, and there's some really cool stuff that is happening at the high school level as students are learning practical, real-life skills that kind of can propel them forward, right?
Right, exactly. So we have the typical programs, welding, shop classes that you think, carpentry, HVAC, that prepare students for immediate work. But now we're seeing, like with our health science, we embedded CNA, medical assistant, and phlebotomy in the curriculum. So as seniors, they graduate, take those tests, and they get employed by Singing River Health System. And now we're seeing that spread across the state. There's other districts doing the same thing. Ed Prep is a class that the students go into classrooms as juniors, and they learn about teaching. They learn about being an assistant. So in the state of Mississippi, if you have silver and above on work keys, which is a national test through ACT, you could be a teacher assistant. So we've used that to let these students that are 2-year completers of Ed Prep go into our elementary schools as teacher assistants. With the teacher shortage, introducing them to the career of education early, and we're seeing a return of those students going off to college and coming back for us, trying to grow our own educators in our district. Sure. So there's a lot of opportunities.
The thing to me is when you're 15, 16, 17, 18, and you've got your entire life ahead of you, you're not necessarily thinking about your entire life ahead of you. You're thinking about, what am I doing after school? What am I doing this weekend? The tests that you've got coming up. Are you finding that the students that are in the CTE programs, in the workforce development programs, are a little more focused on their future than perhaps the typical junior high or high school student is?
Absolutely. And that's something, I'm on a panel later this morning, and that's something that we want to talk about, because we're seeing, yes, they're 17, 18 years old, but this isn't, when they go into these business and industries as seniors, it's not to find out if it's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. And so we're seeing business and the industry put their hands on them, invest in them, and their retention rate of employees, entry-level employees, the retention rate is a lot higher than just bringing someone off the street that maybe doesn't know anything about what business and industry they do. These students have been there a year. They know what is all going on, so that's where they want to be.
We not too terribly long ago finished a house remodel, and kind of hands-on with it. Not in terms of hammering and nailing per se, but involved kind of with the contracting process. And I've learned a lot. We've done that a couple of times. And one of the things that has struck me is it's hard to get people there on a construction site. And it doesn't really matter what the trade is. Whether you're talking, electrical or plumbing or HVAC or flooring or carpentry, finished carpenters, whatever. And it strikes me that there's such an opportunity that's there. Because if you've been involved in a construction project of any kind, it's not cheap. And so you've got labor costs that are involved. I'm just wondering if dangling dollar signs in front of an 11th grader, a 10th grader, is the best way to grab their attention. That says, hey, you may still be trying to figure out your future. This is what you can make in 2 years. Not to mention if you take some business classes along the way and you tried to turn this into a real business, not just going out and working for somebody else. To me, that's like a longer range plan that's a little hard for a 16-year-old to wrap their mind around.
It is, but, we're seeing students need a job when they're in high school. And if they can get a job, and we're finding this not just in my district, but I was just talking to someone earlier, it's districts throughout the state are doing the same thing. There's unique things going on throughout the state of Mississippi. These students want a job, but they would like to do something in a career that they might be interested in doing.
Right.
The industry, like I said, reinvest in them. If they want to continue their education, the business will pay for it while they're going to school. But it's not just attractive to students. Dollar signs are attractive to parents.
Yeah.
And we started using that for recruiting in CTE about 10 years ago. We put a banner of business and industry out in front of our classes, And when parents and students walk through, it strikes up a conversation. Why is Ingalls, Chevron, Air Masters, all these companies, signs out in front of these classes, and then it strikes up a conversation. Yeah. So money talks.
This is from a parenting standpoint. One of my biggest concerns for all three of my kids, and I think there are other parents, because I've had conversations with other parents about this, how do we teach work ethic? And I'm not one of those that wants to. I feel like kids get thrown under the bus all the time. Oh, they're not like we were because they're always staring at a screen. And while there may be some truth to that, it's like, are they seeing that? Are they figuring that out at a young age? With the students that you're working with, do you see a work ethic that is good for the next 50 years?
Well, CTE has that built in. So it's trying to capture them before they get to us, and trying to capture those students that don't have an opportunity to take CTE, because CTE, every student's not going to have room in their schedule to take it.
Right.
And I know you were talking to Mr. Waller earlier. The career coaches have been a huge part in our district and in sister districts throughout the coast and in state. Those career coaches put their hands on those students who have never had CTE. Yeah. And they introduce those concepts to them. And the state of Mississippi, through legislation, has give us opportunities to start career exploration in 7th and 8th grade. And that's helping.
Oh, really?
That's helping introduce those necessary skills. Used to be employability skills. We call them necessary skills to students in our district in 7th grade. But most districts, at least by 8th grade, start getting some introduction to social media usage, dress for success.
That's really interesting to me, because, if you ask a second grader, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a professional athlete.
Right.
When you ask that to a 7th grader, it feels like the answer that you get more times than not is, I don't know. What an incredible time to start opening eyes to, right. Hey, this is what's out there.
And that's what a lot of districts are doing, trying to recapture that. And we have hero days in elementary schools, and we're starting to see now we bring in engineers and other occupations besides those that you mentioned that are students want to do, football player, athlete, entertainer. So we're starting to bring in those veterinarians, people that work at Ingalls, people that work at Chevron.
I know where I live at Oxford High School, they do what they call Workforce Wednesdays,
yes.
where they bring in different, people from different industries to speak to kids and try to expose them. Is that happening all over the state?
In some pockets, they call them different things.
Yeah.
We do that through our Keystone class in 7th grade. We have a lot of business industry come in.
Right.
We have monthly meetings with all the 5 school districts, business industry, and IHL. Once a month, we meet on Tuesdays. We call it Education Workforce Management Group, and we all meet together and discuss important topics in business and in education. So it's happening in pockets everywhere.
I appreciate so much your time this morning.
Absolutely.
Such a fascinating conversation. And,
yes, sir.
And good stuff happening on the coast in the Pascagoula Gautier School District and hopefully all over the state of Mississippi. Dr. Derek Reed, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
We've got more Mornings with Richard Cross with you on this Thursday morning as we broadcast live. Folks starting to make their way in. Finally had some alarm clocks go off and people coming to MEC today for the annual meeting. Quick time out. We're back. We've got more coming up. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
All right, now to the important stuff.
Your VIP pass to hear what the most influential Mississippians are talking about.
This is very important. Huge news.
Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
You're sorry once again. You want me to take you back once more. You say what you told me once before.
Good to be with you on this Thursday morning. We are at MEC's annual meeting, Mississippi Economic Council annual meeting. It's happening today at the Jackson Convention Complex. So glad to be with you. Lance is in the studio. I'm Richard Cross. Really enjoyed the conversation with Dr. Reed just a few minutes ago, and have enjoyed all of the visits as well today. We're not going to go necessarily too far down this road. It's not sure it's the right setting. But are you seeing the reaction that a lot of Democrats are having to this MS-13 El Salvadoran gang member, Kilmar Abrego Garcia? I mean, James Carville has been one of the shelf life for him as a political commentator has been longer than most. 20, 30 years he has been in this space. And there was a time where he was a really bright guy and he had aggressive ideas. Now I feel like he's just an old guy that yells at the clouds. And yet people still go to him constantly for interviews because he provides a pretty good soundbite. And he's got that old Louisiana, what they ought to do, That's what James Carville is. He has become a caricature of himself.
It's like the Crypt Keeper from HBO, from Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. Yes. So, as you would expect, when there is an issue to talk about, somebody puts a camera on him, puts a microphone in his face, wind him up, and let him go. And what do you get? You get James Carville saying Democrats' top priority, top agenda right now should be bringing back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. That should be the number one priority for Democrats right now. Can we groupthink this just for a second? Because James Carville was one of the people that immediately after the election said, Democrats lost our way. We got a messaging problem. We got to figure this out. He was beating that drum. And yet, following an election, 3 months since the president took office, 5 months since Election Day, when Donald Trump was voted in, an election that swung on the economy and border security. Those were the two biggest things that swung the election. We've got to get America safer by controlling the southern border, particularly the southern border, but the northern border as well. And we got to figure out how eggs need to not cost so much. It's interesting that on the economic side of the conversation, because of the tariffs and because of all of the headlines that are being grabbed by the tariffs and the stock market, there are not a lot of people that are recognizing that the price of gas has gone down, the price of a dozen eggs has gone down, the price of milk has gone down, consumer spending is up. And you and I all know why those things have not been recognized publicly, because we don't tend to trumpet the good news. But on the border security thing, Americans just voted. And oh, by the way, this isn't just a Republican issue. You had a lot of people that were going to vote for Donald Trump regardless. 77 million people did. But even within Democrats who refused to vote for Donald Trump, there was concern about illegal immigration. There was concern about the violence that was being enacted by illegals who are here in the United States. And so James Carville, who just a couple of months ago was, to anybody that would listen, saying that the Democrat Party has lost its way, it's lost its messaging. It doesn't have a message that resonates with people. It just lost an election because of this lack of messaging. Donald Trump just won an election because of his messaging. Has he got dementia? Can he not remember what he said just a couple of months ago? Because now what you have is a man who clearly, based on police reports, local police reports, and federal reports, clearly has strong ties and was an active member of MS-13. alongside Tren de Aragua, the two most violent gangs that we've got in the country today, both of them originating in Central and South America. This man was illegally here from El Salvador and admitted as much in the federal report. Like the federal law enforcement report, if you go through and you read that, it says that when confronted by law enforcement, he and 2 or 3 others that were with him quickly admitted that they were from El Salvador, they had no immigration papers, they were not here legally, and they were referred to ICE.
And they had rolls of cash on them and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Listed, who has rolls of cash, and one thing
but from a messaging standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, James Carville is saying to you today, the top priority for Democrats today should be to bring back this violent gang member into the United States from El Salvador, his home country. He is El Salvadoran. He is not American. He is not a Marylander, as the senator from Maryland tried to convince us. He's a bad guy.
Yeah,
now,
you got
originally, was he deported for a wrong reason? Was it a paperwork issue, a miscommunication, as the Trump administration has admitted? Yes, it was, and that's sad. That's sad that it happened that way. But if you want to convince me that the message that James Carville and Democrats need to be selling is the top agenda item for Democrats should be to bring back this gang member from El Salvador, we got to get him back to the United States, I would say to you, Democrats learned nothing in the election that they just lost. You are out of touch with the American people if you believe the top priority, the top agenda item of the Democrat Party should be to bring an El Salvadoran gang member back to the United States.
Sad story, too. Patty Murin, the mother of murdered Rachel Morin, who was murdered by a different illegal immigrant from El Salvador, spoke at the White House press briefing Wednesday and called out Van Hollen's support for illegal immigrants over her daughter and said, to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even barely acknowledge my daughter in the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring somebody back that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more rights than my daughter or my grandchildren? I don't understand this. And I think a lot of us feel that way.
Yeah. Ceasefire text line 601-879-4395. Carville's still bright. He knows that being outrageous keeps him prominent, crazy like a fox, and still making money and getting SuperTalk to talk about it. Well, maybe so.
Good point.
Maybe so. I hope he lives forever. Because, why? Well, one, makes my job easier. Great sound bites. We talk about him. I'm with you on that point. Number 2, with viewpoints like his, Democrats aren't retaking these offices. But let's go back to the second part of that, which we talked about a second ago. Midterms are getting closer every single day. Is there enough time for the Trump administration to figure out a way to get the tariffs, the tariff conversation, the ad hoc, chaotic implementation of, removal of, pause of, to get it under control where it is evident to an everyday American that this is going to work, or at least that there is a plan that makes sense? News isn't going to explain that to you. And so the Trump administration has got to figure out a way to communicate that message and see stability within the economy. Uncertainty is that's the number one buzzword right now. Uncertainty within the stock market, uncertainty within the business community, uncertainty within the investment community. People like to know what's coming up. It informs their decisions. It helps them in planning. It helps them in deciding how they're going to vote and what they're going to vote for coming forward. Chaos doesn't sell during an election. There's a little bit of time, but there's not a lot of time. You know what Democrats are going to run on in the midterms. And here's the thing. That margin that is so small right now in Congress, on both the House side and the Senate side, it's not going to take much for it to flip. And if you want to see a lame duck presidency, the final 2 years of the second the second term of Donald Trump, it'll be as difficult as it is to get legislation passed right now, and make no mistake, this whole governing by executive order thing works for a little while. If you want lasting change, it's got to go through the legislative process. Congress has got to enact legislation. You can't just govern forever by executive order. Glad to be with you. Mornings with Richard Cross. We're back right after this.
From the Wake up, get up, and start your day right with Mornings with Richard Cross here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
I try to call you, but on the midnight watch I realize
MEC's annual meeting. Mornings with Richard Cross. Glad to be with you on this Thursday, broadcasting from the Jackson Convention Complex. It's been a good morning, a lot of good conversations. John McKay just made my day, and he doesn't even know it. Lance, we were talking about you a second ago, talking about some of your bygone days, and he said,
good stuff.
He said, Lance was a big, formidable fella back in the days when he was in shape and fit.
Oh, come on. Yeah. I hear you, John. Hey, thank you. That's motivating.
Lance, we've all reached middle age, hadn't we, buddy?
Yeah, we have.
Amen to
that. I accelerated through it, So.
John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. I promise to be more engaged with you today than I was the last time we visited. A lot of the conversation this morning that we've had has been about early childhood education, getting kids ready from right out of the gate. Middle school, high school education, trying to guide some of the choices that they're making for future employment. We've talked about workforce development and career training, certificate programs. You work with manufacturers all over the state of Mississippi. What is if you take all of those conversations, you go, man, that sounds great. What's the practical application of that? What are your members looking for in terms of new hires or in terms of upgrading positions for people that work for them already?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And really, I'll kind of start back when I first got into this world, now approaching almost 20 years ago. When I first started, the thinking really was we needed to find people, mainly post-high school folks that were looking for employment, and either find them training opportunities or train them in-house. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that thinking has evolved, especially post-pandemic, of we can't think of workforce development as something that happens after high school. It really is a continuum. You could start in elementary school, but let's say you start in middle school of really exposing young people to what opportunities are out there. And to us, that's one of the biggest hurdles is you can drive highways all over the state and see those big metal buildings on the side of the road, and few people know what goes on in those buildings. And that's the fault of, honestly, industry, because we haven't told our story. There are incredible facilities with the highest technology in the world right here in Mississippi, but most people don't even know that they exist. So we have to do better about getting into the schools, explaining what opportunities exist, and then training for those. And that starts in high school. So there are career and technical education programs in high school that lead to those pathways.
It's funny that you say that about not telling the story and painting the picture, because I think for most people, the mental image of a manufacturing facility or a factory is low light, grimy, dirty floors, greasing machines, uniforms of the workers, and they got a hole in one elbow, and the reality is
it's very, very different.
I've walked through a manufacturing facility in the last couple of years, and it looked like I could have sat down and eaten breakfast off the floor. Spotless,
100%.
Automated, technology, clean workers that have got their safety gear on, but they've got starch-pressed uniforms. It's not the image that exists, I think, in a lot of people's minds still.
That's right. And really, manufacturing employment. Now, I will have to say, there are still jobs in manufacturing that are tough and loud and those kind of things. Now, we have done a tremendous job on the safety aspect. So if you're in a loud environment, you've got protection from head to toe. All of those things are in place. But the vast majority of new advanced manufacturing facilities, There are none of those aspects. I mean, it literally is a clean environment. Things are laid out in a way that make the work very different and easier on the folks that actually do the work. The other thing that's happened is you, quite frankly, need fewer people to do those jobs, but you need them at a much higher skill set. So all of that automation that you mentioned, all of that technology in those facilities, you need somebody to come in and be able to, diagnose and fix those machines if they go down. And that takes a different level of skill. And that's where we really need our educational partners from K-12, community college, and quite frankly, IHL. I sit on the board of the Center for Manufacturing Excellence at Ole Miss.
Right.
And the level of talent coming out of that program is incredible. I'm talking world class. They get recruited all over the country to get the talent that comes out of those programs. And
Really?
we need more of those in Mississippi. Mississippi State, unbelievable engineering program. Those students are highly sought after. Those are the folks that come in and really do the job of, 50 years ago, 10, 20 people would do those jobs. Now you have one person that kind of operates a whole sector of a plant. So it's really incredible the way it's changed.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Ole Miss and Mississippi State, Southern Miss. I mean, there are some of the oceanic engineering work that is happening.
The polymer
there.
sciences at Southern Miss is unbelievable. I mean, that's a facility. We work with them with companies that need assistance with their processes. And those folks will come in and explain that these higher-end composites could actually replace some of the components that they've had in their products for years. It's a very neat field.
So, John McKay, President CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association, visiting with us. I understand that there are idiosyncrasies within each manufacturing company, right? I mean, there are unique qualities that exist. What are the positions that are kind of across the board?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter whether you're building cars or you're building microchips or you're building turbine engines or anything in between.
Sure.
Every manufacturing group needs this. Fill in the blank.
Yeah, so I would first start with industrial maintenance technicians. And that's a broad category of folks, but essentially you get trained to go in and be in a manufacturing facility and be the person that when anything goes wrong with the line or the machinery, you step in and get that equipment back up and running so that production can continue. And that's incredibly important because now in manufacturing, you have such a dynamic of just-in-time processes. So manufacturers don't keep inventory on hand for months out. They are literally day-to-day, week-to-week on inventory. So if the line goes down, they could have a whole backlog of inventory that stacks up, and they just can't have that. I mean, that's a production method that really has taken over not only the United States, but quite frankly the world. So it's moving in a very different direction.
Interesting stuff. When you watch the news, you see the announcement from a company like NVIDIA a couple of days ago. $500 billion investment over the next 4 years. They're going to build supercomputer microchips here. That's happening in Arizona. That's happening in Texas. Texas has been a hub for economic development for a long time. Do you see Mississippi trending in that direction? I mean, we've seen so many economic development announcements from the governor's office in the last 6 years that he's been been there. Can Mississippi continue to grow in this space?
Oh, absolutely, and I think you've seen that momentum from the governor and his team. It's been incredible progress, but again, that goes back and highlights the need for this workforce development. Not only do we need to train at a higher level, we need to train at a higher volume. So that means we need to keep our best and brightest here in Mississippi, but also we need to, again, from the lowest levels to the highest levels, really concentrate on the jobs of the future. And that's tough because what happens is in these educational environments, you start programs and they sort of get on autopilot. They're good quality programs, but they're looking backwards at the jobs that we have had. We need to be a lot more diligent about the future jobs, the AWSs, the NVIDIAs, all of those type positions.
Do you see manufacturing companies trying to do everything in-house, or are they contracting services out as well? And so within this career training and building the workforce, I'm thinking about other career paths. Whether it's working in the electrical space, the plumbing space, or the HVAC space, or the construction space. Do those opportunities exist just as much as side-by-side industries with manufacturing, or is that different?
Well, I mean, essentially the framework for the issues we're having in both of those spaces are identical. We need more people to do those jobs, and quite frankly, they're great jobs. But what we haven't done is been very deliberate about training for those jobs. And so in the construction space especially, I'm on the State Workforce Investment Board, and that's an area that we've really concentrated on, because in order to get the AWS facility up and running,
you have people to build it.
Absolutely. And the amount of HVAC that those supercomputers need to cool themselves down is incredible, and you can't have one go out for a day or two. They have to be constantly there, and so you'll have more HVAC employees at those facilities than you will some other technicians. So it really is, it all works together, and those are the jobs we really need to fill. And again, expose people at a younger age to those opportunities, because again, I think electrician and plumber, those jobs don't look the same as they did 40 years ago.
Oh, I completely agree with that. There's no question.
And they can name their price when they come out.
I was going to say, and in terms of the ability to make a great, not a good living, not a livable living,
yes,
a great living.
Absolutely.
It surpasses a lot of other fields.
Yep.
John, always appreciate your time.
Thank you, Richard.
Good to be with you. And have a great day.
Thank you.
On the panel later, right after lunch. You got to keep everybody awake right after lunch.
It's a tough order.
John McKay, President, CEO, Mississippi Manufacturers Association. A fast 3 hours. We'll wrap it up with Scott Waller from MEC right after this.
You're waking up to what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross. Right now on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Thursday morning with you, a fast 3 hours. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. Glad to have you along. It's been a fun morning. We've learned a little bit. Got to visit with some old friends, made some new ones as well, as we broadcast live from the Mississippi Economic Council's annual meeting. MEC got started in 1949 and thriving today with a really good crowd arriving this morning. I want to remind you of one thing. Tomorrow, Super Talk Mississippi all day long, best of. You're going to get best of shows throughout the day. Tomorrow, Good Friday. We hope that you have the opportunity to spend some time with family, friends, and perhaps unwind a little bit. I'm guessing that Scott Waller is going to unwind a little bit tomorrow.
I fully intend to, without question.
Maybe even this afternoon a little bit as well. What a great turnout.
Oh, it is. It always is. This is so much fun because we've been doing this. I've been in MEC for 19 years now, and I think we moved to the convention center. I think we may have been one of the first major events at the convention center when it opened. Probably 15, 16 years ago. And it's fun to see everybody out and to see people from all across the state come down for the event. And we always try to have some good information, good informative sessions, and then a little bit of fun at lunch. So I think we're going to do that.
So in terms of the agenda today, I think there are a lot of people that don't necessarily know that the Star Student, Star Teacher program falls under the MEC umbrella. Leadership Mississippi we talked about with Gene earlier this morning, and then a little bit later in the morning you're really going to get into the meat of the program.
We really are. So speaking of Star, we had our education celebration. Thursday was a week ago.
Okay.
We had over 1,000 students, teachers, parents at the event out at Hines over in Rankin County. We honored 302 STAR students from across the state.
And criteria for a STAR student?
Criteria is you have to make at least a 25 on your ACT, and you have to have a 93.5 or somewhere in that neighborhood GPA.
Okay.
Vicki Powell on our team runs that program and does a tremendous job. And we were talking about it yesterday at our board meeting. She literally takes the calculator and checks every number on a student's application because she wants to make sure that it's right, it's qualified. The integrity of that program is incredible.
And the truth of the matter is, those are minimum standards because you get a
minimum.
You get a bunch of 35 with 4.25.
We get a lot
GPAs.
of those. We get a lot of 35s, 36s. If a student makes a 35 or above and they have the GPA, they automatically qualify. So some schools have multiple students. I think Mississippi Math and Science had 9 students honored as star students this year because they either had a 35 or a 36.
And if I remember correctly, if you are awarded star student, then you have the ability to choose a teacher who is honored as the star teacher.
That is correct.
Right?
That is correct. So they bring their teacher with them. It's always a great opportunity to recognize someone who's helped them along the way. And you're talking about the ACT scores. I want to say this year, well over 200 of those students were at 30 or above.
Wow.
So the numbers have increased greatly. The achievement, the academic achievement of these students continue to rise. And it's just a great example of what we're doing to make our state better.
There's real scholarship money that is available when you hit that 30 mark on the ACT.
There really is. And I think some of our universities and colleges across the state add extra dollars if you have that star student designation as well. So that's been great.
You know, we've talked a lot about growing the workforce, building the workforce. I notice on here that talent retention is one of the topics. Keeping the workforce once they're here and rolling.
That's key. We started looking at this, and I've said this a lot. The term brain drain, I just don't care for it for one reason, because usually what the sentence that comes right after is you're losing your best and your brightest. In 2022, we did 12 focus groups with young professionals all across the state. And let me tell you what we learned. There are a lot of bright people that have chosen to stay in Mississippi. There are a lot of bright people that have chosen to come to Mississippi. We just need more of them. We need more people to stay. We need more to attract more of them. So our companies are constantly looking for ways to, hey, how do we get people, maybe it's repatriate them, get them back home. How do we attract people from other places? How do we sell our state? So they're very cognizant of talent attraction has to be something that's high up on the list.
Well, last thing here, there's so much conversation about manufacturing because these projects are big, right? They're big. Sometimes there's a B that's associated with a project that's going to employ a lot of people. What about what would traditionally be termed white-collar jobs? Is there a focus on continuing to attract that to our cities across the state as well?
Well, and I think that's one of the there's a session on talent retention. There's also a session this morning on what industry needs are, and we have included that white-collar. That we have someone who's an accountant talk about how they attract, employees to their firm.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. It doesn't matter what business it is, but all sectors of the economy are needing talent. And we're doing everything we can to help them get it.
Scott, we appreciate the partnership. Always good to be with you. This has been a fun event, and wish you success throughout the day.
Thank you.
Scott Waller, President and CEO of MEC, MEC's annual meeting. It's been fun to be with you. Lance, thanks for all your work this morning. Good being with you.
Always a pleasure, sir.
We wish you and your family a happy Easter weekend. Hope you get to enjoy Good Friday and then get a chance to reflect and worship on Sunday morning as well. Thanks for joining us. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back with you on Monday.
My name is Tree Top.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.